Sup Shredders, my name is Logan, aka Spiderhands, and welcome to an SP Reacts, where today we have ourselves a track from an act named Wade Colter titled Say It While You Can. And if we switch over to here, we have ourselves a track on the screen. Apparently this has been produced by Bar Poppin Studios. And I've reviewed music from these guys before. Apparently they create sort of custom songs for stories that people want to tell. So it should be good to listen through this. We're going to check it out from start till finish, and we're going to hear what we think. Let's do it. Let's go.
There were words I kept for later. Thought I'd know the perfect day. Life kept moving faster, and the moment slipped away.
I mean, it's very somber, isn't it?
I assumed you always knew it, that it didn't need a sound. Funny how the things that matter most are the ones we don't write down. Say it while you can, while the door's still open wide.
I like the adjustment of the 16-note group.
While the voices on the other end, and the eyes still meet your eyes. Don't wait for the right moment or a reason to begin. If it matters, say it clearly. Say it while you can. I watch time make decisions.
I like that line.
Without asking what we meant. I've seen silence turn important things into quiet regret. There's no harm in being honest, no weakness in being kind. Some words don't age like wine, they just wait too long and die. You don't get to rewind love, bookmark the days that pass. Some truths only do their work if you let them out at last. If you're holding something heavy, thinking later's the right plan, later isn't promised, but now still has a chance.
You know, I think the wordplay works quite well.
Say it while you can, with nothing held in reserve. Say it plain, say it gently. Say exactly what you've learned. No speech is no perfection, just a heart that understands. If you love someone, let them know. Say it while you can.
No, I feel like that's an effective track. I feel like I got what the song was about within the first 30 seconds about it, and we just kind of elaborated from there. We're going to talk about this track more in the conclusion. Because welcome to the conclusion of my review of this track from an act named Wade Colter, again production from Bar Poppin' Studios. This is titled Say It While You Can. In this section I'm going to provide an overall song analysis as well as any sort of applicable constructive critique, and then finally my general thoughts on this song from a listener's perspective. But first of all, what do we think this track is about? I think that this track is about someone who is warning you to not take time for granted, to express what you need to the people around you that are important in your life, and to just be open and transparent. And again, we talk about time making decisions without asking us for more information. There's some interesting wordplay through this. I think the lyrics are quite clever. The vocal performance itself seems earnest from a vocalist, very sort of like comfortable in her head and chest voice. There was, some moments were a bit more vulnerable at the start, and then we kind of built into our kind of main body as we went along. And at the end, there were some parts where we called out, and it was nice and sort of like present within the mix. We didn't overcomplicate the vocal performance. There were, adjustments to the tails and parts where we sung more notes rather than trying to sort of tell a story. But I feel like it was relatively well fleshed out through the 4 minutes, and it was kind of an earnest, sort of like gentle performance despite some of the more sort of intense parts. So I think primarily because we weren't trying to be too affronting to the people we were trying to discuss this stuff with. I think we were trying to be sort of gently reminding people as opposed to being too harsh and brittle about it. The track itself is just outside that 2 to 4 minute sweet spot where, like, if it's less than 2 minutes, you might be missing some sort of context that might have been underexplained, or if it's over 4 minutes, you're wanting to make sure you haven't sort of had too much of the same sort of theme so that the listener doesn't lose interest. Here, I think that the song is relatively well sort of like spread out. I think that we add, it's almost like a pseudo ballad format here. We add more instruments as we go along, and that makes sense for a longer form factor. Typically, you might go for like a big change in like the tone of it, or like a chord change or a key change or something like that, like a sudden shift, like a different chapter or something like that, or you might come down and be a bit more sort of like quiet with certain parts. But this was almost like a through composed piece where we were just very sort of comfortable with the main sort of chord progressional theme that we had there, and we're just sort of further wanting to explain different angles of what we were kind of making the song about, to sort of I suppose focus on the vocals as the focal point. You could have also had sort of other sort of like main lead layers. There was a lot of call and response, which I appreciate. So there's not like we didn't have sub leads or alt leads. I'm not sure if this track would have benefited from a dedicated lead section. I think that having this track at 5 minutes with a lead section might have been a little bit superfluous. So I think in that regard, I think it was structured well. From the moment that we come in with the kind of chord note kicks there, eliciting, like, creating that pulse there, moving us forward, and the guitars are quiet. And I think that's a sensible decision there because it makes it sound like kind of we're waking up to the message that's being told to us there. We work with a lot of open chords and sort of steel string guitar parts throughout a lot of the piece there, which works well for the country genre, like it's a staple of it. And there was some really sort of interesting kind of nice sounding arpeggios or fingerstyle bits on the guitar to kind of like add more sort of range to the way those different progressions are heard. Highlights the root notes whilst also not sort of keeping things too simple, I suppose. And when the strings come in, they add a nice sort of mid-range layer there and are more of a sort of a constant kind of sort of tone across the piece, as opposed to something trying to sort of be more sort of rhythmically oriented again, like the guitar arpeggios, the strum part to the drums. When you add the shakers, a chicka 1E and a 2E with that 16 note pace, it's a nice sort of contrast to the strings and the chord note groove on the drums. But works well, I think, with the guitar sort of fingerstyle parts there. So there's bits that connect with each other and are in unison with each other, and it just kind of further strengthens the tapestry of the piece. And as the strings rise, you've got this kind of glow to it that's very kind of friendly, and this, like, if it matters, says it clearly part, where it kind of seems like there's a positive kind of nuance to that there, that it's a good thing to tell people that. And as we get into further sort of more sort of dedicated sort of call and response parts where the strings are their own sort of lead instrument with a few notes, I suppose, it's just nice to have that variation there as we go through it, to not take the listener's attention for granted. I think we also have some keys as we go through it, and the keys are just a nice sort of soft additional similar texture to the guitars, I suppose, not being too brash or bright there, but something a bit more sort of like subdued to kind of, again, keep that mid-range sounding strong, but also to decorate, to not allow things to sound like they're too down, too low in the frequency spectrum, whilst not being too bright. The vocals maintain presence. And to be fair, around the 350 mark, things do go down for a moment there, so there is that kind of dynamic range compositionally, to be clear about that. It's not like it just goes up and up like a consistent rise. Yeah, like the instrumental parts, I think there was a bass in there as well, probably sort of like proliferating the root notes. The guitar, strings, keys, drums were the main sort of elements alongside this. the vocals, they're, I think, thematically working with a variety of different sort of major and minor chords there. Potentially some dominant sevenths there, though those are relatively subtle, and with note choices adding a bit of further kind of complexity emotionally if that kind of happen upon like an extension or something like that. But typically, I think we're just trying to make really accessible music that decorates what it needs to whilst remaining catchy and sort of open for people who are more familiar with the genre. And I think the vocal styling of it, that kind of twang, kind of sells it as well. And I think that, you know, you needed to have those major chords in here, because if it had just been consistently minor, it would have been depressing almost like no matter what you do, it won't matter. So I think having the switch there harmonically was good. Studio recording, mixing and mastering, I like the way that things were leveled within the frequency spectrum with no weird resonant frequencies as well as the stereo field. You know, like the music surrounded you in the headphones. There was, you know, composition dynamic range there. Some of the guitar parts at the start were kind of quiet, which is nice, and we had things go up as we went along. And the vocals were nice and present in the mix as well, so you could hear everything clearly. And yeah, it was nice to not have things too glued, but it was nice and loud without pumping, so the bus compression and limiting was handled. Yeah, honestly, no applicable constructive critique for me, because I think I had to think about the different lead layers and the way that we had varying sort of like rhythms and note choices there without alienating from the chord and note progression. From a general listener's perspective, I feel like I learned more of a lesson from Wade Colter than like learn more about who they are. I think they'd just be depending on like the further context of who they are as a musician, kind of learning more of their story. With that said, I appreciate the way that it was phrased, and I think that generally it seemed made of good intentions. And so ultimately, I feel like there'll be a resonance and like something that people really appreciate within this track. And I wish everyone involved the best of luck in future, because thank you for watching my review of this track of an act, or should I say from an act, titled Wade Colter. With production from Bar Pop and Studios, the song titled Say It While You Can, and hopefully you enjoyed it. If you did, please do go show them some love via their various social medias and YouTube page, and stay cool and stay safe, and please remember to support your local musicians and artists at this point in time, as they need the help more than ever with all the crazy stuff going on in the world, and I will catch you in the next SP Reacts. Spiderhands out.